Hello, my name is John Ogilvy. I'm a consulting cloud architect for the Canadian government here in Ottawa. There are a lot of my colleagues who are trying to put protected B workloads into the cloud on behalf of the government. And I've had some experience with that. I'm currently working on my 5th protected B authority to operate, which is a license to operate in the cloud. So I've been asked to capture some of the security controls that I've used. And specifically, we'll be looking at Treasury Board's recent Cloud Guardrails document. Now, the Guardrails document lists 12 security controls that they're looking for when you're putting a sensitive protected B workload into the cloud. And we'll be looking at them one at a time over the next 15 minutes. So the first two, protecting the root and global admin accounts and the management of administrative privileges, are related. And they're about the very specialized accounts that you will be using when you are actually constructing and operating workloads in the cloud. These are normally going to be database administrators, application administrators, and then folks who are maintaining the security perimeter around the solution. So the first thing that they're reminding us to do is to use multi-factor authentication. So that means that in addition to having a username or password, I'm going to use something extra. It might be a security dongle like this from Entrust, or geek out here, it might be a security pin coming in on your smartwatch with Google Authenticator. So there's all kinds of ways to do that. And so when you get your subscription from shared services, that original set of credentials should be used to create a number of other high-powered administrative accounts. And the original master password and username should be carefully set aside and not used again. So the administrative accounts that you've created can be distributed to the team, and they can be used on a routine basis. But if they're ever compromised, you always have that master account that controls them all. I say one ring to bind them all. The Treasury Board Guardrail talks about break glass emergency account management procedure. It's very dramatic. When there's a fire in a building, you're going to break the little glass and pull the lever, or break the big glass and get the fire hose or get the axe. So this is the IT equivalent. You want to create accounts that are widely known to more than the normal administrators, because you may have to call someone unusual in to address the problem if you can't get your main administrator on a Saturday night. The related control is about the administrative accounts in general. And the principle is that we are going to have a number of accounts with elevated privileges. This is the ability to create resources in the cloud, or to stop and start virtual machines, and so on. So the Treasury Board Guardrail is very sensible. It says write down your process for creating these accounts. Don't do it informally. Administrative accounts, privileged accounts, are a source of a lot of concern in the security world. And you need to have a set of mechanisms and policies and procedures, you see them listed here, to control those accounts. A key factor in all security is the idea of least privileges. So you are going to think hard about what exact privileges does my database administrator need, and you're going to give that person only those privileges. The third guardrail is how this gets implemented. In the cloud, the control panel, the dashboard, the console, is a web page that your administrators can use to deploy resources, deploy systems into the cloud, and to see what's going on with monitoring and so on. So that cloud console, in either Azure or Amazon or Google or whatever, has to be protected. So you're going to have rules about who gets to operate that, and you're going to do multi-factor authentication. Turning on all of the cloud's built-in monitoring and auditing capabilities. These are things like the Security Center or the Azure monitoring, the Amazon equivalents. They cost a little bit extra, but it's the best money you'll ever spend if there's an incident and you need to figure out what happened and prove it wasn't your fault. So the next one is about data locations, number 5. And when we build systems on premises, we know that we're operating in a Canadian geography because we're typically operating in a SSE data center or at least a government facility. In the cloud, we have to do our due diligence, and as an architect and administrator, you constantly have to be verifying that these wonderful new cloud features you're turning on are actually storing their data in a Canadian geography. All the cloud vendors have multiple redundant Canadian data centers, so even your backups can stay in Canada. This is a due diligence thing. Create your resources, especially your storage resources, in a Canadian region. Control number 6 and 7 are about how we protect this data, which we've located in Canada. 6 is about data at rest, and 7 is data in transit. These are quite familiar to any architect who's built a government system. They don't change in the cloud. So data at rest is data sitting in a cloud storage account, and we are going to encrypt that. We are going to encrypt it using what is called a client managed key. We're not going to just let Amazon or Azure encrypt it with one of their everyday keys. We're going to use the key vault that's available in all the cloud providers. We're going to create some unique keys that are under our control, under the administrator's control, and we're going to use those to protect our databases and our storage accounts. Control number 7 is similar. Data in transit is data that is coming from the outside world and entering our cloud. You'll hear the word cloud enclave used to describe that part of the cloud that's being used by our department. So we're all used to doing TLS, or it used to be called SSL encryption for HTTPS traffic coming into the cloud. We're going to continue to do that. We're also going to encrypt any other flows that are coming in. So you might have an FTP, so that's going to be a secure FTP. You might have a remote desktop or secure shell, and so you're going to make sure those are encrypted as well. We are going to apply our standard network zoning policies to the cloud. What's wonderful in the cloud is that the architect can actually sit at the console and define the zones. You don't have to rely on other people to do that for you. You can't go wrong with your typical 3-tier architecture of presentation, application, and database zones. The idea really is to mimic the structure that we'd see at an SSC data center or at any well-designed government data center. Control number 9 is about network security services. This is the one that causes the most turmoil. So the first part here, egress and ingress points, managed and monitored. Their Treasury Board here is trying to describe a firewall without using the word firewall. So we want to have a single point where the data is flowing in and out of our cloud so that we can choke that down to the flows that we've approved, and we can monitor it very carefully. If we have multiple points of ingress and ingress to our enclave, the monitoring becomes more difficult and simultaneously less reliable. So the control here talks about boundary protection mechanism and perimeter security services, intrusion prevention. These are all features of a high-quality enterprise firewall. So You are going to be deploying a firewall into the cloud. There's different ways to do that. The cloud vendors themselves offer firewall as a service at the subnet level, or the VNet, or the VPC network security group, or many other ways. You also can look at what are called NVAs, network virtual appliances. These are third-party firewalls, Cisco and Checkpoint, Fortinet. They're available in the cloud as well, and I strongly recommend that you make the effort and pay the cost to get them, because when you do have a security breach, you do not want to explain that, well, we cheaped out on the firewall. That's just, it's money well spent. And the last point about access to cloud storage shall be limited to authorized source IP addresses. That's whitelisting. The cloud makes it very easy to specify rules that here are the only sites or the only domains, address spaces that I want to see my my storage or my applications. So the applications that I have done, we have not used a VPN. These protected B systems are hanging out there on the public internet because we want them to be available to our partners and the public, but we do protect them with restricted whitelisted flows, deny all except for the ones that we whitelist, and we're getting IP addresses for the partners that we're going to be allowing to access our systems. Control 10, Cyber Defense Services, or Guardrail 10 actually, is very easy to implement. The Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and to another extent SSC, can be your partner in protecting these enclaves. It hasn't happened in my reality yet, but I'm looking forward to the day. So this guardrail is about signing a memo of understanding with the Center for Cybersecurity, Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and following their guidance for hooking up your enclave to their monitoring systems. I really like the idea of a central security operations center run by trained professionals who have visibility across all 43 departments. So this is a piece of paper signature, and it doesn't involve any architectural changes as long as we have put up our ingress firewall properly. The 11th guardrail is logging and monitoring, especially for protected B workloads. You're going to have to convince your security officers that you are maintaining granular logs of who is accessing your system and hopefully what they did and what they changed. You'll still run into difficulties if you're trying to do software as a service, something like Power BI, where the vendor is logging and auditing what they've decided to protect. And if your security team asks for a bit more detail, you really will find it difficult to provide that. And if you stayed with me, we're at the end. The last control is about configuration of cloud marketplaces. So in the major Amazon, Azure, and Google cloud environments, you'll find a collection of pre-built services, and especially virtual machines. Every open source package and a growing number of commercial solutions are available for a single click deployment. This is beautiful because you have a software package like Databricks or whatever that's actually been installed by the people who wrote it and tweaked. So it saves you a lot of effort. Now, the challenge, this control really points out that single-click deployment can be a procurement of a commercial solution, which is governed by some quite clear PSPC policies. So what this guardrail is saying is that just because you can launch an Oracle instance in your cloud, you are not actually legally permitted to do so. Open source is okay. open source. We're not actually accepting a commercial license when we launch it. And I've had good luck setting up lots of Postgres and MongoDB and Apache open source distributions. And we're always allowed to use software from Microsoft, for example, that we have under enterprise agreements anyway. The cloud is just a different deployment model. But so there you go. Those are the Treasury Board's security guardrails for the cloud. It wasn't as scary as you might have feared. There is another much more detailed TBS document called the Security Playbook, which takes all these points and amplifies them and gets very specific. So these guardrails are a good starting place, but they're not the end of the story. I invite you to use this information just to get yourself oriented to how you're going to operate securely in the cloud. Right? Thanks.